send them from the wilderness to Paran, and those men were heads of the children of Israel. Now drop down to verse 17. It says, And Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said unto them, Get you up this way southward, and go up into the mountain, and see the land what it is, and the people that dwell therein, whether they be strong or weak, few or many, and what the land is that they dwell in, whether it be good or bad, and what cities they be that dwell in, whether in tents or in strongholds, verse 20, and what the land is, whether it be fat or lean, whether there be good therein or not. And be ye of good courage, and bring the fruit of the land. Now the time was the time of the first ripe grapes, verse 21. So they went up and searched the land from the wilderness of Zin and Rehob, and sent men, and as men come to Hamath, verse 22, and they ascended by the south and came to Hebron, where Ahiman, Shehi, and Talmai, the children of Anak, were. And Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. And they came unto the brook of Eshcol, and set down thence the branch with the one cluster of grapes, and they bare it between two upon a staff, and they brought the pomegranates and the figs, verse 24. And the place was called the brook Eshcol, because the cluster of grapes which the children of Israel cut down from thence. And they returned from searching the land 40 days. And they went and came to Moses and Aaron, and all the congregation of the children of Israel unto the wilderness of Paran and Kadesh, and brought word unto them unto the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him and said, We came unto the land, whether thou seest us or sendest us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. Nevertheless, the people be strong and dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there, and the Amalekites dwell in the land in the south, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and by the coast of Jordan. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses, and said, Let us go up once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. But the men that went with him said, We be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought an evil report of the land, which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, The land through which we have gone into and searched it is the land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. And they saw the giants and the sons of Anak, which came of the giants, and we are in our own sights as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. It's a story that's familiar to most people. We've got the story of Moses and Aaron as they began to lead the children of Israel out of bondage, and God had promised these people, I'm going to take you from the land of bondage, or Egypt, and I'm going to give you a promised land. And basically what he told them to do, when he led them to the shores of Canaan, and we know it by a lot of different names. We know it by the Promised Land. We know it by Canaan. We know it by Zion. However you want to phrase it, the place where God took these people was a place of promise. And when they got there, what God told Moses to tell the people to do, I want you to take 12 spies, and I want you to send them over into Canaan. And first of all, I want you to spy out the land. And the first thing that I thought was an interesting note in verses 17 through 20, where we have the account of what God told the people to do. He said, I want you to spy the land. I want you to see if the land is good for you. I want to see if it's bad for you. See if it's going to be productive for you. And will you be able to take the land if I send you there? The first thing I thought of was, will God ever take you from one land or from a land of bondage and put you into a land that's worse than he's delivering you from? Absolutely not. If God delivers you from a bondage, folks, the promised land that you'll go to is never worse than what you're being delivered from. Amen? That's the truth. In verse 2, we find in this chapter, God promised the land to the people of Israel. He said, I'll give it to you, but you're going to have to do a couple of things before I do. And when they got there, they sent the people there. And the one thing that we want to look at in here, the key is in verses 31 and 32, and we'll get there in just a half a second. Don't go there yet. But in verse 18, God asked the people, he says, is there anything in the land that's going to hinder you from getting there? Is the land good for you? Is the land bad for you? This is what I want you to decide. And in verse 20, he said, will the land be productive for you? Once you go into the promised land that I've promised you, will it be productive for you? Will you be able to live there? Will you be able to do the things that I want you to do? And God's basically saying, I'm giving you something now. I'm going to want you to go and check this out for yourself. I think he did this for their benefit more than his. He knew the promised land was where he wanted them to go. He knew that that land would be productive for them. He knew that when they got there, it would be the place that he wanted them to be. So what I want to look at real quick is a couple of points about this that I want to bring out as far as what today's point is. And the one thing that I think we need to ask ourselves from time to time is, are you bounced around from pillar to post in life by life's problems? When a problem comes upon you, does it seem like you just, man, it shoves you over here in this direction, or it shoves you over here in that direction, and things happen to you that you can't control? Does that ever happen to you? Secondly, does the problem ever control you? Or do you control the problem? We have a mindset sometimes, a lot of people, and when we begin to describe these, you'll be able to think about people. You'll be able to think about situations that you were in yourself. And I want to tell you how to change that. Is there ever a problem that's too big for you and God to handle? How many times have you heard the expression, me and God are the majority? You ever heard that before? Is there ever a problem that you come up against that you and God can't take care of? Sometimes a lot of Christians believe that there are. Go to verse 30. The whole point to today's message or today's sermon is the big A word, attitude. It's attitude. It's all in how you view or how you perceive a problem. We have the problem, first of all. The people of Israel are at the borders of Canaan. God said, I want you to go in and spy the land. See if it's good for you. See if it'll be productive for you. See if this is where you want to go. And we've got 12 people that went out. And when the 12 people came back, here's the attitude of the 12 that viewed the same problem. Look at verse 30. This is the right attitude, by the way. Verse 30. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. Is that a positive attitude? Absolutely. Verse 31, the wrong attitude. But the men that went up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are. We've got 12 people that are viewing the same problem, and 12 of them are looking at it differently. We've got 2 people that said, we can overcome this problem. And 10 people said, we can't overcome the problem because they're too big than us. Caleb and Joshua, when they looked at this, they said, we, along with God, can handle this problem. The problem that they were confronting wasn't too big for them and their God. When the other 10 spies that went up with them said, our God and us are not big enough to take care of this problem. We can't do this. The problem is bigger than God and bigger than ourselves. And we'll do well to learn this problem, because the results here, if you want to read these couple of chapters back and forth in front of this, you'll find what happened to all of the people. God said, because of your doubt, because of what you're doing to me, you're provoking me. I'm telling you, I'm giving you this land. He let these people die in the wilderness. The only people that saw the promised land was Caleb and Joshua. They saw the promised land because of their attitude. They believed God, and they believed in what God said he would do. He said, I'm going to deliver you into the promised land, and they believed him, and that was their key to getting into the promised land. How do you have an attitude change? Well, it's all in how you view what a problem is. The definition for an attitude from Webster's is this. It says, it's a posture or a manner of carrying yourself. It's an indication of a mood or a condition. It's a state of mind, or it's a feeling. When you come up against a problem, how many of y'all have problems? The rest of you, how many of you are lying to me? Okay? All of you have problems. It's the way you view a problem will depend on how you react to the problem. If you let the circumstances control you, it's going to be a problem. If you control the circumstances of the problem, now who's in charge? And let me say this about that. Most of the problems that people that I know of are twofold. It's either money or it's people. One of those two. They either have a lot of money problems or they have people problems. If you have money problems, there's lots of different things you can do to take care of the money part of it. as far as getting counseling, those types of things, you're well aware of those. There's places you can go to get help with your budgets and all that. But the point that I want to mention about the attitude and the attitude change is when you view a problem, it's either a mood or it's how you react to a problem. How do you have the right attitude about a problem that comes up? And again, we all face them. It doesn't make any difference what it is. How do you view a problem? How do you change your mind, or how do you change your attitude? Number one, when we're talking about the definition, about the way you carry yourself, the image that you project, those kinds of things, how do you change your wrong attitude into a right attitude? Number one, stop feeling sorry about yourself. Thank you, Bob. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Folks, we're nothing special. There's nothing special about me that says I'm not going to fall behind on my bills. Just because I'm David and I'm standing up here today, that doesn't mean I'm going to run out of gas with my car next week. Okay? If I was too lazy to put gas in it, that's my problem. Okay? But don't feel sorry for yourself. The Bible says that a change of mind or an attitude is a posture. It's a way of carrying yourself. Hold your head up. Put a smile on your face. Put a little bit of pep in your step. Okay? Change the way you walk. Change the way you act. Stop moping around like you're dead. For crying out loud, and stop talking like it. Okay? I got a sister, and dear God, I love her. But if she catches a cold, I can talk to her on the phone, and she sounds like she's on her deathbed with a foot in the grave. I'm serious. It doesn't make any difference. Stop talking like the end of the world is here. It's not. You're going to make it through the problem. You will, I promise you. I promise you you'll make it through. Hold your head up again. It's all the way that you carry yourself. It's the way you are. You choose to feel bad, folks. You can either feel bad or you can feel good. Is that true? Choose to feel good about it. Number one, it's easier. And number two, it's a whole lot healthier. Okay? There's an awful lot of people that are walking around with ulcers right now that shouldn't have them because, number one, they're worrying about things that they can't control. They're worrying about things they can do absolutely nothing about. Most of the worry, from what I understand, comes from things that will never, ever happen anyway. I think it's, what, 60, 70% or something like that. It's a real high percentage of the things that you worry about will never, ever happen anyway. I have these fantasy arguments in my mind. I don't know if y'all do or not. I'll rehearse arguments with people. If I know, I'm serious, and I'll do this in my mind. Do any of y'all do that? None of you. I'm the only one here. We got a couple honest ones. What will happen a lot of times is I will, and I have no idea where these topics come from. They're in my mind, and that's where they stay for a while. And I'll pick out somebody who I know I want to argue with. I don't know why. And I'll rehearse this argument, what I'm going to say, what they say, what I say in response. And if they say this in response, then I'm going to say this, this, and this. And usually after 5 or 10 minutes of this, I really start to get upset. I really do. I start getting myself mad. Any of y'all do that? We got a couple. Okay. I do that. And usually I wind up about halfway through this, and I'm talking 5 or 10 minutes into this argument that I've got going in my mind. David, stop. This isn't even going to happen. And sometimes I really, and it's the truth, I have to get myself and gather myself and say, stop doing this to yourself. You're getting yourself upset over something that will absolutely never happen. And if it did, you probably wouldn't talk like that to the people in the first place. How many of y'all know in your mind, buddy, you are the absolute champ for arguments? You win them all. You never lose a one. You never lose a fight. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's not good for you. It's healthier for you to change your attitude. It's healthier for you to be happy about things. Change your attitude about how you view a problem. If you have the problem, it's all in how you view it. It's either a learning process. Folks, when we go through trials and we go through tribulations, the one thing that we should look at, and I've just started doing this recently. I haven't done this my whole Christian life, is when I'm going through the problem, God, what do you want me to learn from it? Okay? If they turn off your gas and electric because you didn't pay your gas and electric bill, what's the lesson to be learned? Pay your gas and electric bill. This must be tattle on David today. I've done that before with the money order sitting on my table for 2 weeks. And too lazy to pay the bill. I know what it is. It's happened. I've done it before. I've run out of gas because I've had money in my pocket and too lazy to stop at the gas station. I've done that. And I know some of y'all have too. When you go through the problem, ask God, God, why am I going through this? What do you want me to learn from it? And look at it as a learning situation rather than a problem. If we let all the little incidental things in life that come up against us start to mount, and they begin to control us, folks, the first thing we do as Christians is lose control. And once you lose control, who has the first step in the door? The enemy. And once the enemy gets in, and once he has the first step, once he has the first foothold with you, things begin to happen that you can't control. You begin to lose control of your own life. If you view problems, if you look at things from a different perspective, not as a problem, but just as a situation that comes up, depending on how you handle it, it'll depend a lot of times on how you react, how your mindset is, how you're going to feel 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now. And let me say this about that. Folks, people get sick, okay? People die. People lose jobs. People run out of money. All of these things happen. People's marriages break up. People suffer broken hearts. All of these things are part of life. How you view these things when they come upon you, oh, it's just tremendous. If you'll learn to take these situations and say, I'm going to control this situation, and I'm not going to let it control me. And many, many Christians sit on a pew and perish. They just go through their Christian walk, and if they're fortunate enough to stay with the walk their whole life, they're usually not much count because they can't get beyond a certain point. They're good for God up to a point, but they can't get over that hurdle that's in front of them. They view it as a mountain that's too high to climb. They view it as a problem that's just impossible for them to conquer. And they always leave out the one person who says, come to me and let me help you with that problem. That's what God was telling these people here in Israel. He said, I'm giving you Canaan land. He promised it to them in verse 2. He sent them up to the shores and said, I want you to go spy out the land. And I think he did it because he wanted them to see what he had in store for them. And he said, all you have to do is go possess it. Caleb and Joshua had the key in verse 30. They said, let us go do it because we can do it. And the other 10 said, no, we can't. It's too big for us to conquer. The people are too big. God said over in one of the other verses, I think it's in verse 9 right there. He says, why do you rebel against me? He said, because you're rebelling against me, because you're revoking me. He says, I'm going to let you die in the wilderness. The key that I wanted to get you to look at, when you have the change of attitude, when you view a problem, what is your promised land? Where do you want to go? Is your promised land peace of mind? There's people here in this church today that don't have it. Their mind is just so riddled with things that have happened to them in the past, they can't let go of things that may have happened to them, and they're scared to death of things that might happen to them. Do you want peace of mind? Is that your promised land? Is that where you want to go? Is your promised land a happy marriage? A lot of people in here have, I don't want to say bad marriages, but have trouble in them. Is that what you want your promised land to be? Where do you want God to take you to? Is your promised land salvation? My guess is there's at least one person here in this auditorium today that's lost. Is that where you want God to take you to? Is your promised land a repaired, broken heart? There's a lot of Christians that are sitting right here today that just absolutely have a broken heart that I can't see. God can see it. Is that where you want God to take you? Is that where your promised land is? What's keeping you from getting there? God, when he told the land of Israel, when they got up to the borders of Canaan, he said, spy out the land and see what's in it. See what's going to keep you from getting there. He said, is it people? And I'm going to ask you the same thing. The promised land that you want to go to. If you've got a bad marriage and you want that marriage mended, what's stopping you from getting there? Is it people? God can change a broken heart. God can heal a broken heart. And God can change a hard heart. What's stopping you from getting salvation? Is it yourself? Is it pride? What is it? Do you think it's impossible for God to handle? Is there a problem? Is there a problem too big or impossible for God to handle? I don't think so. When you can talk to the one who's in complete control of creation and who created all that there is to create, who more to go to and talk to than the one that can control that situation? What's stopping you from getting into the promised land yourself? Are you afraid, and this one got me, are you afraid of what you might become when you get there? A lot of people are afraid of success. A lot of people cannot stand peace and contentment and joy. That's not what feeds their spirit. Okay? What feeds a lot of people's spirit is division. And I'm talking about Christians. Gossip. Hardship. These are the things that feed their spirit. A lot of people believe if these things happen to me, look at the attention I can get. And they do get attention. And they do bring them up on a constant, continuous basis. I don't think they could stand peace and joy if they got there. So what do you do? Is the problem too big for you, or are you too big for the problem? Chapter 14, verse 22 and 24, or 22 through 24, we read what happened. This was the result of the 2 people that had the right attitude and the 10 people that didn't. Chapter 14, verses 22 through 24. Because all these men which have seen my glory and my miracles, which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tempted me now, these 10 have not hearkened to my voice. Surely they shall not see the land which I swear unto their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoke me see it. But my servant Caleb, because he had another spirit with him, and hath followed me fully, him will I bring into the land whereunto he went, and his seed shall possess it. And if you'll go on over to, I don't have the verse written down here, it's right over just a little bit further. There it is, verse 30. It says, Doubtless you shall come into the land concerning which I swear to make you dwell therein, save Caleb, or the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua the son of Nun. Because of the attitudes these people had, Caleb and Joshua had the right attitude about the problem that they saw. We can do it because God said we can do it, and we've got his help. God said, because these 2 people believe what I said, I'm going to take them to their promised land. Because the other 10 said, I don't believe God can do this, they're going to die in the wilderness. That's the one question that I wanted to ask you about this example. Do you have the faith that God can take you to the promised land you want? Do you want a happy marriage? Do you want peace in your heart? Do you want peace in your mind? Do you want these things? God promised every one of them to you. Question is, do you have the faith that he'll take you there? Or are you going to die in the wilderness? You have the choice. God said, you have the choice. It's up to you to decide what you want to do. The problem that these people looked at was all attitude. They either had the right frame of mind about it, or they didn't have the right frame of mind about it. They viewed it as a problem they couldn't handle, or they viewed it as a problem they could handle. Second example I want to show you, turn to 1 Samuel. Another story that is familiar to just about everybody, even little beginners up. 1 Samuel chapter 17. Verse 3 through 7. Then we'll drop down and cover just a couple of verses throughout the chapter. 1 Samuel 17, 3 through 7. Starts out this way. And the Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side. And there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, who had 6 cubits, or whose height was 6 cubits in a span. That's almost 10 feet tall. And his helmet of brass on his head, and he was armed in a coat of mail. Now, mail, if you don't know, is it's a coat that they wear. It's made of scales, or it's made of chain loops. It's a very heavy metal protective thing, and it could either be made of scale or chain loops, that type of thing. And this is what he wore. And the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass, which is 180 pounds. That's how much the coat wore that he weighed, or that he wore. And he had graves of brass on his legs, or he had shin plates on his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. A target of brass is nothing more than something that he uses to hit with. It could be a club, it could be a dart, it could be a staff, it could be anything that he can use as a weapon. And basically it was something that he carried right here that he could pull out. In verse 7, and the staff of his spear was like the weaver's beam, and the spearhead weighed 600 shekels of iron, which is 21 pounds, I believe. And the one who bare his shield went before him. We've got a picture of Israel on one side of the mountain, and we have a picture of the Philistines on the other side of the mountain. This is the problem. Okay? It can be a big problem. Y'all know the story. David, who was the shepherd at the time, was tending the flocks up in the hills. He didn't have anything to do with this battle. But the Philistines were here, and they were up against the nation of Israel, and they were fighting in this valley. You had one on one side of the hill, one on the other side of the hill, and they had meet in the valley. They'd fight for a while. Then the land of Israel would go up to the mountain. The Philistines would go up to the mountain, and the next day they'd come down and they'd fight a little bit more. And they would do this until a victor was decided. When David was up on the mountain, he got the command from Jesse, I believe it was, who said, "Go down and see your brothers. See how the battle's doing. Take them some things. Let's go down and see how this is going on." And when David went down, we find him in verses 22 through 26. David had the right attitude about this. So go down to chapter 17, verse 22 through 26, and we'll read that part of it. Verse 22. It says, "And David left the carriage." Now, we've come to the point where David is getting out of the carriage, going down to see his people. They're going down to see his brothers. It says, "And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came the champion of the Philistines, of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words. And David heard them." Verse 24. "And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have you seen this man that has come up? So surely to defy Israel is he come up, and it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king shall enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make the father's house free in Israel." Verse 26. "And David spake to the men, and said, or stood by them, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach of Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that shall defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered in this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth him." I've got this mental picture of David, a short little rascal, standing in the midst of a whole bunch of soldiers with their spears and their shields and their swords and their helmets. And this big 10-foot guy comes out in the middle of this valley and says, "Hey, come on down." He said, "Let's fight for a while." And David said, "Why don't you guys go down there and fight this guy?" And all of the people of Israel, all of the men of Israel said, "We're afraid of this guy." Well, David, what really got me, and we'll get to this verse right now. I want you to look down into, let's find it here real quick, because I know where it is. Look at verse 17, verse 32. This is what David's reply was. Verse 32. "And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go down and fight this Philistine." When I read this verse, I got this mental picture of David saying, "Don't spaz out, king. Don't let your people have a heart attack. Good gravy." He says, "I'm just a little shepherd boy." He says, "Don't worry, kings. I'll go down and take care of this guy for you." And when David looked at the problem, he looked at Goliath, and he viewed the same problem that the army of Israel viewed. But he viewed it a little differently. David said, he said, "I can take this guy." And the people of Israel, or the men of Israel and their army said, "This guy's too big. We can't do this." And David, when you read about David in verse 37, look what David says in verse 37 there in that chapter, same chapter. It says, "David said, Moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion, out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with thee." David, based on his past experiences, said, God delivered me from the bear, he delivered me from the lion, and the same God that delivered me from these problems is going to deliver me from this problem. He'll do it again. Thanks. He'll do it again. It's all in how he viewed the problem. When he viewed the problem, over in verse 40 through 47 is where we get the term, "The battle's not mine," said David. "It belongs to the Lord." When you view the problem in the right perspective, what is the outcome? Or usually the outcome? Victory. Thank you. It's victory. What is the Goliath that's in your life? Okay? Because before a lot of times you can get to the promised land that you want to get to, you have to conquer the Goliath. Okay? There's usually that obstacle that's in front of you. What is the giant that you need to defeat? Okay? Is the giant you need to defeat smoking? Now, I'll tell you this. This is my own personal story. When I began to teach and when I began to preach, I used to smoke. I'd smoke 2.5 packs a day. If I didn't have one in my hand, I had one in the pack lit, ready to put in my hand. Okay? There was nothing better than smoking after a big meal. I mean, to sit down in a chair and light one up, we're talking pleasure. Okay? I enjoyed it. I ain't going to lie to you, and some of y'all that smoke still enjoy it. Okay? Just that simple. If you want to quit, you can quit. I'll put it that way. God will deliver you. When I began to teach and when I began to preach, I quit smoking once. I said, God, smoking for me is a bad influence because I did have people say, why are you witnessing to me with a pack of Marlboro in your pocket? That was the comment that I had several people say to me. And when I realized that point, that it was going to hinder my witness, I said, God, I don't want to quit, but I have to. I have to because of what you want me to do. I can't be a witness with a pack of cigarettes in my pocket. Folks, it just don't work. I don't care how you look at it, it don't work. So I was laying in bed one night, and I asked God, I said, God, you've got to take this from me because I can't do it by myself. And that night, I'm serious, I felt a little tingling that started just at the top of my head. And it's kind of like a little electrical shock. That's the only way I can explain it. That began to go through my body, and it stopped right around here in my heart and my lungs, and I could feel it cleaning me up. And I could feel it taking the urge away. And it went all the way down through my feet. And from that day forward, I didn't smoke because I just didn't even want to anymore. So a few years later, I thought, one's not going to hurt. Well, I'm sorry, it wasn't a few years later, it was just a couple of days. I said, one's not going to hurt. I mean, one after lunch, that's going to be fine. So I had one after lunch. It was about a week later after that happened, not a couple of years. About a week later, I had one after lunch. It was great. Stopped and got a cigar on the way home. Now, Judy didn't know this. Of course, she does now, so if y'all tell on me, she already knows it. Okay? Smoked one on the way home, and it was great. It was great. Before I knew it, it was less than a week, I was back up to 2 packs a day, 2.5 packs a day. And I said, Lord, I said, this can't happen. I said, you're going to have to do with me again what you did last week. And I'm not lying. I was laying in bed that night after I prayed it, and that same thing started again. Right here at the top of my head, got down here, and it's just like somebody took a wash rag and washed everything out. And it felt good. And I got up the next morning, and I didn't want one after that. And I said, Lord, I'm not going to pick another one up because I'm afraid of what will happen if I pick up another one. So I went years and years without smoking. And it was great until I had a job one day that I sat and didn't do nothing but watch TV and read. And I got paid for that. It was nice. So the first thing I thought of was cigarette. So I went over to UDF and I bought one. I said, well, I can smoke it without inhaling it. Don't work. So I went over and got me a pack of cigarettes, and it wasn't a month later, and man, I was back up to 2 packs a day again. And that's right after God called me to preach. But the thing was, this time, I never would let anybody see the cigarettes. Judy knew I was smoking, but she never saw them. I never smoked in front of her, never smoked in her car. If I ever smoked in her car, she'd kick me out. That she hates that worse than anything is to drive somebody around that smokes in a car. Oh, that drives her. She goes off the deep end with that. But anyway, she never saw the cigarettes in my pocket. I never smoked in the house, never smoked in the car, never smoked in view of anybody. Even the Christian friends that I ran around with, they knew I smoked, but they never ever saw the cigarettes on me because I didn't want to bring reproach on them. It was a habit that I had. And I knew that if I associated with them, that they would think the same thing. You know, people would see the same thing. And I'd go to work and I'd smoke in the bathroom stall and cry while I was smoking. I'm serious. God, look what I'm doing. And I said, God, take this away from me again. And that's when he told me. It was then that he said, he spoke to my spirit just like I'm speaking here. He said, I did it for you twice. He said, if you want to do it now, you're going to have to do it. He said, I'm not going to help you this time. And I had to do it. And he told me, he said, you can do one of two things. He said, you can smoke if you want to smoke, or you can preach my word if you want to preach, but you'll not do both. He told me that. He said, you're not going to do both, but you can do either one you want. I threw the cigarettes in the commode, the lighter in the commode, and haven't had one since. Because this is more important to me. But the one thing that I had to do, that David had to do, he had to come face to face with the Goliath that stood in front of him. God will take care of problems for you. But there comes a time when you have to stand up in front of the problem, just like David did, and confront the problem itself to defeat the problem. You can't run from a problem and defeat it. But you and God together can do that. Is drinking your Goliath? We were going to get on this in Sunday school this morning. There are Christians that drink. Doesn't make any difference. Is that the Goliath that stands in front of you? You can be delivered from that. God can deliver you from that. Is your Goliath language? Do you live on bad words? Do you like the dirty jokes? Do you like the movies that just have all of these things in them that just are as ungodly as they can be? Do you want to be delivered from those things? If you want to, and you're serious about it, folks, you can be. It's just that simple. Is your Goliath a bad attitude? Well, I know some Christians got some rank attitudes. I mean, they're just as far off in the left as, as you could drive a Greyhound bus on Saturday. They're just way out there in left field. If you need an attitude change, God can change your attitude. An example. Are you a bad money manager? Let your wives manage the money. Ladies, I just gave you a chance and you blew it. Okay? I am the absolute world's worst money manager. Judy is probably the best. Okay? If there are problems in your life that you know are problems, avoid the problem. If you need help in an area, get help in an area. There's nothing wrong with going to financial counselors. There's nothing wrong with going to marriage counselors if you need to have counseling. There's nothing wrong with those things. If you need to go to a doctor, go to a doctor. Recognize the problem and do something about it. God will give you the grace. He'll give you the strength. He may even deliver you from those things. But he gives different routes that you can go if you want to go. The thing is up to you. Come face to face with your problem. David did it in verse 45. Learn from where your help comes from. He learned it in verse 37. He said, my help is from God. And learn to fight the fight. David did it in verse 49. He fought the fight with Goliath. God promised him that he would overcome. He came against the problem face to face, and he overcame the problem. What's the Goliath that's standing in front of you, stopping you from getting into your promised land? Where do you want to go? Do you want the happy marriage? Are you doing anything about it? Do you want your broken heart mended? God's the mender of broken hearts. Have you come to him and talked to him about it yet? How about salvation? If you want salvation, have you asked God to save you? Do you want peace of mind? Have you come to God and asked him for the peace of mind? What's stopping you from getting the peace of mind? What's stopping you from the happy marriage? Whatever your promised land is, and for as many people as there are in here, there's probably that many. What do you want from life? Where do you want God to take you? And what's stopping you from getting there? That's what I wanted to show you in these two examples. If you have the problem, if you have a goal that you want, whether it's your promised land, defeating a Goliath that's in your life, whatever it is, it's all in how you view the problem. Either you have the right attitude and you and God can conquer the problem and get to the promised land, or you'll stay with the wrong attitude and die in the wilderness that we're in. Let's stand. That's the example that I wanted to show you. Mike, would you please? I'm going to have an altar call in just a second. And what I'd like you to do, if there's some place you want to go, whatever, like I said, whatever promised land it is, folks, you can take the absolute first step today. You can begin the walk today. If the Goliath in your life needs to be defeated, you can begin to defeat the giant today. Can't do anything about yesterday. Yesterday's gone and recorded. Can't control tomorrow. We've said that before. That's not within our ability to do that. But you can start today, and you can take that first step to the promised land that you want to go to today. And you can take the first step in defeating the Goliath that's in your life. The altars are open. If you need somebody to help you pray, we've got altar counselors here who will help you pray. We'll anoint you with oil. We'll do whatever we can to help you achieve that you want to achieve, whatever it might be. Come find yourself a place to pray and begin that walk today. You can have the promised land, folks, that you want. You and God together can do it. Find you a place to pray. Come pray.